Welcome to 5 Minutes in the Word, a daily devotional in the Word of God.
Look, when you look in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, you see God's people, the children of Israel. Now, many times, children of Israel, they were doing what was right before the Lord. They were living those right kind of lives. But when we come to the book of Judges, we start seeing that the children of Israel, they're going to get into a pretty bad cycle. In fact, after the death of Joshua, you're going to see them just continually over and over and over again, just continually fall away. And God would send to them leaders. He would send to them judges. And these judges were not necessarily perfect people. That they all had flaws. They made mistakes at times.
Yeah.
But there were people that God sent to help deliver the people. One of those people was Gideon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Gideon today?
Well, Gideon, at first, let's just look at Judges 6. We'll get to see the call of Gideon, starting in verse 11. But the first little attribute, or I guess personality trait we see of Gideon is more or less he's a coward, kind of. Let's look at verse 13. And Gideon said to him, after the Lord appeared to him, and Gideon said to him, "Please, sir, if the Lord is with us, then why then has all this happened to us? And where is all his powerful deeds that our fathers recounted to us, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian." You can see that further down in verses 15 and 17 as well. It seemed like he was whining, more or less, to be called from God.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of whining.
But further down, it's kind of like a balance between Gideon. He does some good things and he does some bad things. And the first really good thing that we read about Gideon is further down in chapter 6, looking at verse 28. I'll read 28 through 32. When the men of the town rose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was broken down, and the Asherah beside it was cut down. And the second bull was offered on the altar that had been built. And then they said to one another, "Who has done this thing?" And after they had searched and inquired, they said, "Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing." When the men of the tower said to Joash, "Bring out your son, that he may die, for he has broken down the altar of Baal and cut down the Asherah beside it." But Joash said to all who stood against him, "Will you contend for Baal, or will you save him? Who contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because his altar has been broken down." Therefore, on that day, Gideon was called Jerubbaal, that is to say, let Baal contend against him, because he broke down his altar. So now, we see that Gideon cut down the altar of Baal, and he went toe to toe with a little g god.
Right.
That's where he got the name Jerubbaal. However, he repeatedly continued to test God. For the sake of time, we're not going to read it, but the sign of the fleece is more or less Gideon saying, "Okay, God, if you really are the God of heaven and the God of the forefathers, you'll let the dew fall on this fleece, or you will not let this dew fall on the fleece," the test of the fleece. But the most famous story that we know Gideon for is the battle of the 300 men. And if we look in chapter 6 again, looking at verse 33, the same people who are camping in the valley are the same people who were mad that Baal was cut down, or the Baal idol was cut down. And after God instructs Gideon on how to win this battle and how to enter the battle, Gideon wins. They defeat the Midianites. However, let's look at chapter 8 really quickly. Chapter 8 verses 13 through 17. Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle by the ascent of Heres, and he captured a young man of Succoth and questioned him. When he wrote down for him the officials and elders of Succoth, 77 men. And when he came down to the men of Succoth and said, "Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you have taunted me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to the men who are exhausted?" And he took the elders of the city, and he took thorns from the wilderness and briars with him, and taught the men of Succoth a lesson. And he broke down the tower of Peniel and killed the men of the city. So now, Gideon, he kills these men because they didn't help him. And this is obviously a disciplinary issue.
Right.
But again, the balance between Gideon, the good and the bad. Toward the end of Gideon's life, he begins looking at chapter 8, verse 22, and going down through 28. He builds an idol of all the gold from all of his winnings that he had. And then it kind of, again, looks back to what you were saying in chapter 2, kind of a prelude to the book of Judges, where there was peace and there was happiness. Then they would build an idol, worship it, they would fall into captivity, realize what they'd done, and then they would be delivered. And it's just a continuing cycle. And here in the life of Gideon, it's the same thing.
Well, you know, when I look at Gideon, I see a little bit of Moses in him. See,
Yeah.
Moses too, he had questions. He had questions about, you know, why me, Lord? You know, why am I the one that's chosen? And he questioned God several different times. Gideon questioned God several times.
Yeah.
Moses also, he rose up to help deliver the people, and Gideon also, he rose up to deliver the people. Unfortunately, after Gideon's conquest, after his great victory with the help of God, he does introduce idols. And that does lead to back into that cycle. And that's something that we need to think about, is that we as God's people, we need to be watchful, watching out for those things so that we don't end up falling away, so that we always can be pleasing to God.
In addition to that, one of the biggest things we can take away from Gideon is his faith and his dependence upon God. Right. Because had he not had the faith in God and his dependence upon God to win with just 300 men,
right?
There's no telling what would happen. So that's what we can take from Gideon, is having faith and dependence in God, and God will surely deliver us to victory.